go style. Lately all you see me in is Moncler. You could've had it all, but the pain got you. Now I do this, oh yeah. I used to hate the fame, but it's great without you. With somebody new.
Mixing different elements and techniques and sounds from different genres and styles can be a huge way to keep your production sounding fresh, and it can be an amazing way to put your own signature stamp as a producer on any record that you're working with. Knowing how to blend genres to come together and form one cohesive unit is a really big tool that I think a lot of people look over, and so I wanted to do a video where I show you how I take elements from 3 different genres, merge them all together, and we come out with a really good song at the end. So we're going to be looking at how I produced the song Moncler by Riley. It is out now. Riley just released his new full-length City of Angels, so after the video, if you want to go check out this song and several others that I produced on the album, as well as all of the other producers, it's a really great album, so definitely go check that out and show Riley some love. But in this video, we're going to be looking at how to take elements from something like a sad ballad and mix that with hard-hitting hip-hop and trap elements, and then kind of sprinkle in some pop elements just to keep everything a little bit easily digestible and kind of familiar with the listener. So we're going to take a look at this project. I'm going to show you everything that goes in. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Show us some love. And then other than that, after the video, head over to our website, Make Pop Music, where you can check out all of our paid and free content, sample packs, preset packs, courses, podcasts, all that good stuff. But let's dive into this session so I can show you how I like to mix different elements from different genres and get a really cool, unique song at the end of it. Let's start with the first element that I laid down when I was working on this particular song. That's this pad, and I started with these chords, and that's not a super uncommon way for me to start. It's just pulling up some kind of pad or key or something like that and just laying down some kind of melody or some kind of chord progression and then building off of that. This is what it sounds like. It is just a pad called Wasted. It is from our Poptopia preset pack. I can't remember if I changed too much about it, but then there's no post-processing on it, just a little bit of a cut around 300 hertz, and it's playing these chords. So we're starting to get some of those ballad elements already. This is a really low-key, kind of almost new age sounding pad, and it's got a bit of like melancholy to it. So I wanted something that would lift that up a little bit. So what we do is we layer over some kind of lead pluck, and that's where we're going to get something like this. This is from Analog Lab. It's a preset that I tweaked quite a bit, and I just saved it under Beauty Harp. Let's take a look at what this is actually doing. We're in the OPXA5, and it's just something that I found and I started tweaking. Here's what it sounds like with no additional processing. So it's got a nice little bit of like chorus and like flanging to it. It's kind of dipping in and out of the tune, and I really like that, but I thought that it needed a little bit of something, so I went ahead and did some post-processing. We've got Echo Cat right here by Waves Factory. Really good kind of tape-style delay. I really like this, especially since they have a mix, a sustain, and they've got some stuff like ducking over here. Then we're just doing some filtering, same thing that we always do on this channel, cutting out some lows. I didn't do much on the highs because there's not really any buzzy high end. And then we're using one of the best free plugins of all time, Valhalla Supermassive, and I'm just using the Hydra Harp setting at like 18% wet, and this is adding quite a bit of shimmer and depth. So we have that super washy lead now with this really kind of ambient textural pad. And we definitely have that ballad feel, but I didn't want it to get too slow because I know that Riley in his songs likes a little bit of bounce. So that's where we're bringing in something like the kick and the snare so we can get some elements that have a little bit of movement. We're at 84 BPM, so it's a pretty slow tempo, and we've just got a kick. And for the snare, I decided to use a rim shot so it doesn't have all of that aggressive top end that something like a trap snare would. And I did a lot of processing to kind of make this feel ambient and put this in the same space as that synth lead. And we're just using repeater to give it some delay. We're using Valhalla Vintage Verb to give it a big chamber sound. And then we're just using some Pro Q to band pass this and get this in the right kind of spot that we want it. So that mixed with, let's do some of these leads and plucks. And what was really important was I decided to go ahead and sidechain all of these synths to the kick. So you can see right here that I've set up on my synth bus, kickstart 2, and I have that set to audio, which means it's going to trigger from whatever I add as the input, and I added kick as the input. So you can see it when that kick hits, it's ducking all of those synths a little bit. And that allows for a little bit of movement and a little bit of vibe, so everything doesn't feel way too spacey and atmospheric. Once I had that, I ended up just kind of randomly finding this ARP from Analog Lab, and I've printed it now, but here's what it sounded like straight out of the gate with no processing. And it is just super chaotic. I literally just played those same chords that I have for the synth lead and kind of set an ARP on random and whatever patch that was in Analog Lab. And it gave me that. Then what I'm doing is I'm mixing Little Altar Boy at like 15% wet. And this is an octave up. And it's giving me this like bit crush top end that feels kind of chaotic, but I really, really liked it. And then I'm adding murder melodies to kind of give this a little bit of different sauce and texture. So we're doing some high pass and some low pass up here. We're spreading it out because I want it really atmospheric. And then we're just giving it some dimension, some icy reverb, a little bit of saturation. Nothing too crazy, but it puts it in a really nice textural space for me. Then we're doing a little bit of Crystallizer because I want some of those reverse reverbs that Crystallizer is known for. And this, again, just makes it feel super chaotic. If you can find something that feels really basic, like an ARP, and you can throw on all of these wet effects and you can kind of give everything a little bit more texture and dimension, it's a good way to make everything sound a little bit more custom. And then we're just adding a Pro Q that's going to be swelling up as we go through the verse. So I wanted something that felt dynamic, and I wanted something that didn't feel like this really big, aggressive ARP. So we're almost using this as kind of its own little riser throughout the verse. And you can hear it starting to come in. Once we had all of that, what we did was started layering the drums. So I have that kick and that snare from before, and I'm just adding a dry rim shot right here for a little bit of punch. And then we've got some backbeat rim hits just to give us a little bit of extra bounce. Layering a clap on every other rim hit just to give us a little bit of length and texture. And then, as I always do, I just find a couple weird loops and start messing with them. None of these really have any processing on them. The only thing is I tune a lot of my loops. So this particular loop is 5 semitones up, this one's 7 semitones down, and this one's 5 semitones down. So mixing all of these different loops together and cutting different splices, we get a percussion section that's got quite a bit of bounce, and it sounds really, really nice on some of those atmospheric kind of sad ballad elements. Now you mix that with all of these synths we've got. And that's kind of the basis of the vibe for honestly most of the song. We needed to beef up this verse a little bit, so what I did was I added a bass pad, and I'm using the Reese's Pieces bass that I always use. This is from Poptopia as well. Just a really nice Reese bass, and I've added kickstart right here, sidechain to the kick, of course, to do the same exact thing that we were doing on that synth bus, where every time that kick hits, it's going to sidechain it a little bit. But what we did that was really cool was I used the band feature on Kickstart too. So it's really only sidechaining everything below 140 hertz, and it's keeping everything above that. So we're not getting that really aggressive swell that you might think of when you think of sidechaining. It's really just making sure that this really, really big bass doesn't kind of counteract with that really punchy kick that we have in there. And then other than that, we're just doing a little bit of R bass to add some kind of resonance and harmonics around 70 hertz, beef it up a little bit, and then we're taking a little bit of these mids out so we can have a little bit of clean space in the mix for things like synth and vocals. That is pretty much the entire verse. The only thing that gets added to these verses is we have a little crush pluck right here. I'll do this a lot in my productions where I'll bring in something for the second half that's doing the exact same thing as the first, but it's just a pad that's got a little bit more space and movement. So I found these retro bells. And I'm just adding a lot of texture with something like Greenhouse, kind of spreading it out, adding a bit of saturation, getting it out of the middle of my space, and then Echo Cat, Supermassive, and Pro Q doing pretty much the same things that we were doing on that lead pluck before. And that just adds a nice little bit of top texture, and it makes sure that it starts poking through the mix a little bit more. And that is literally it for the instrumental for the verse. And then we go into a pre-chorus, and the pre-chorus is really chill. It's just a bass pad, very similar to the one that we had, but this one just has a little bit of the low end cut out. And then we've still got that same ARP and that same lead pluck. And the only new synth sound we have is, instead of doing those kind of big ambient kind of new age pads that we had before, we're using a different preset called Chillin' Keys, and it sounds like this. Just EQing it to thin it out, add a little bit of top end, and it's acting more as like a synth brass rather than this really ambient pad. And it just gives us a nice vibe in this pre-chorus. Mix that with a bunch of rises and hits, things that we always use in the productions on the channel. We'll go over all of those in just a little bit, but that is the entire pre-chorus for pre-chorus 1 and pre-chorus 2. It's about as simple as you could get. And then for the chorus, let's go ahead and let's focus on drums. The bare bones of the drums are the exact same as the verse. I think it's doing the same pattern, maybe a kick here and there. Same exact loops and everything. The only thing that we're adding is we add some trap hats right here. We add kind of this like shaker tambourine hat loop right here, and then a roomy rim. And that's going to give us that kind of hip-hop bounce and that hip-hop aggressiveness that we're looking for in something like a chorus. Now, for the bass pad, we are using that same bass pad as before that we used in the verse. I've just automated the volume up a little bit. But what I'll do in the chorus, if I'm using a lot of elements that are kind of left over from the verse, is I'll layer them up. So I found another bass pad called Rubbed, made some changes to it, and then what I'm doing right here is filtering out all of the low end and taking out a lot of these mids, and it's just adding this like really aggressive kind of mid distortion. And that's going to help that bass be a little bit more audible in the mix, especially when vocals come in and if you're playing this on a small speaker. And that's the only thing I added for the bass and the drums. Chorus, we do have quite a few additions. Let's go ahead and bring these in one by one. So the first thing that I like to do in the chorus is get some kind of bigger key in there to give us a little bit of extra oomph. And that's what we have for this. I'm using a preset called Dream State. This is from the X Keys pack from Echo Soundworks. Really great. I don't think I really did much to this at all. Nope, just a little bit of low and high shelf to thin it out and add a little bit of sparkle. And then we have a high pad right here. This is our Star Showers pad. So I'm using this to add a little bit of sparkle and texture and movement. And again, just doing some shelf EQ. So now we mix that with the E pad, the big keys, and that wasted pad that we had earlier. So we've got an element for some attack with that brass synth that we have for the E pad. We've got that wasted pad kind of adding a nice little bit of ambience. We've got the big keys. They're adding a little bit of oomph and texture to the transient. And then we've got that high pad that's just adding that sparkle on top of everything. So that's doing what the kind of pad elements do in that. Then we have the lead pluck and the crush pluck that we have left over from that verse as well. And I layer that up with something that I called the Angel Pluck. This is also from Analog Lab. I used a lot of Analog Lab in this one. This is a preset called All or Lost, and I know that I tweaked it because I can see the little star there. This looks like it was done in the emulator 2.5. So here's what this sounds like with no extra processing. Doing some EQ with some high and low shelf. and then the same exact processing that we did on this crushed pluck earlier. So greenhouse to spread it out and give it a little bit of saturation and texture, Echo Cat to give it some bounce, and Pro Q just to make sure that it's not getting too distorted or muddy in the low end, Supermassive to add a really shimmery long reverb on top. Here's what we get. And you can hear that all three of those plucks kind of come together to form something that feels cohesive. And it feels like one solid synth pluck, but it's just got a little bit of extra texture and width and depth and dimension. And that's something that I really, really like to do when I'm thinking of layering sounds. Other than that, I pull in that ARP as well, but this time I leave it fully open. I'm not automating really anything, but it's got the same processing. The only EQ I did was take out some of that buzzy high end and just do a little bit of a top shelf. And then we have this like little counter melody in here. And that counter melody was one of my favorite things that we added to this production. This is again an analog lab using the Fluttering Celeste. And looks like this is just the DX7, which I thought it might be super great synth for any kind of those like bell keys. And then we've got a lot of processing on this. So let's take a look. We've got the gate. We've got an auto pan. We've got RC20, of course, doing quite a bit. We've got the tone knob up. We've got the digital, adding some bit crushing. We've got some distortion. And here's the settings if you want to copy that. Then we've got repeater, giving us a bunch of repetition. High feedback on a 16th note. We are ping pong back and forth, and it's very wet. After that, we're using Black Hole by Eventide. We've talked about this plugin a ton on the channel. This is just giving us a ton of space and length. And then after that, good old Pro Q, just doing some band passing to clean this up. We don't want all of that super, super crazy buzz and top end. And you have a really nice arpeggiated little synth thing that happens one time that feels really cool and special. And so now the chorus with all of those extra drums, that extra bass, and all of these extra synths feels like this. And you can almost immediately tell that just by adding some of those more pop elements like the brassy synths, we added those like extra top end plucks, we have that ARP that feels a little bit more bright and open, we have that bass pad adding some mids, and we have those hip hop elements of the extra rims and the extra hi-hats and things like that. It's giving us quite a bit more depth and dimension rather than this initial verse that we have. Where the verse feels much more low-key and mellow, like a ballad, or even like a kind of low-key hip-hop song. And then we're going into something that feels like a pop song with hip-hop and kind of ballad influences throughout it. That is pretty much everything that goes into this entire production in terms of the instrumental. The only other things that we have are in verse 2. For the pad, for the first half, we're using this pad. It's just called I believe this is the Late Night Drives pad from Spectrum. It's just doing this. Same bass pad as before, but what we did on this was for the drums for this, I copied them over, and I went to the drum bus down here and added RC20 on. So we're automating some filtering and some distortion and some reverb on these drums, just to make the second verse feel a little bit different. And then for the second half, we're pulling everything back in. And then it's the same for the second pre-chorus. It's the same for the second chorus. The only extra element that we have that comes in throughout the rest of the song is we have one more really, really, really big pluck that plays in the very last post-chorus. And it's already printed. It was like 3 plucks combined into one. Sounds like this. And that is pretty much the entire instrumental. Let's go ahead and look at some of these rises and hits. I use things like this to build tension. We've done entire videos where I talk about rises and hits and ear candy, but we've got some swells and some impacts. Same thing going into the chorus. The usual suspects. Here's what it sounds like without them. You already know that they're kind of needed in a song. It's fine, just has a bit more impact like this. Other than that, let's go over the vocal production real quick and kind of how we layered throughout the song, and then I want to go over special moments, and then that is pretty much it. So here's what we have. For this song, I literally didn't mix these vocals at all. Riley sent them pretty much fully processed. I did a little bit of EQ just to make sure they fit in the mix, a little bit of de-essing, and some tuning, and that's literally it. So here's what we have.
Is it tough when you see me in nails? And I'm dressed with Balenciaga's help. I'm hard stepping on the carpet so red. I bet there's moments that you wish it.
So in the verse, it's literally one vocal going throughout the entire thing, and we have this really big reverb right here. And what I've done is I've sidechained this to the vocal, so while the vocal is playing, this big reverb's not really doing too much, and then as it lets go, it's going to send out to that reverb and let that kind of wash out like a big reverb throw. We've gone over that before on the channel, but the way that you would do that is just duplicate your vocal, throw on a reverb at 100% wet, which is what we did right here, and then throw on a compressor and make sure that your vocals that you want to sidechain that are set up as your triggers. And here you go.
When you see me in nails, and I'm dressed with Balenciaga's help, I'm hard stepping on the carpet
so we use that throughout the whole song. We use that in the chorus as well. But that's pretty much it. Other than that, he's just got this like really wet background vocal that he sent me. I just put a doubler on it and called that a day. I'm just using the doubler for voices preset. Same thing I use pretty much all the time. We've got a couple delay throws that I threw in here. I just duplicated the track, added Comeback Kid at 100% wet, and then added a Valhalla Vintage verb at like 30% wet, gave us this little guy.
You've been done, I'm sorry I went ghost that way. Sorry I went ghost that.
And then in the chorus, kind of a usual suspect for Riley. We've got a chorus lead. We've got that big reverb that we kind of did earlier. And then we're duplicating that vocal on the left and the right where he sang it 2 more times, giving us some space.
Now you see me in this Moncler. You could add it up, but the panic got you. Now I do this.
And then we've just got these extra vocal formants that he always throws in there as well.
Now you see me in this
Moncler.
oh yeah. I used to hate the fame, but it's great without you. With somebody knows.
And that's pretty much the vocal production for the entire song. There's nothing really crazy on my end that I did at all. Riley kind of handled all of that for this. But I do want to talk about some special moments. And these are things that, between the demo and the final, really made me and Riley kind of both super, super pumped on this. And one of those is in the chorus. We have what's called a double chorus, which is where it kind of repeats itself. But what I did was, for the last little measure, I did a little pull out where I automated all of the volume down. I added this laser riser, and then I added these extra little glitches. And let me show you what it sounds like. It's a really, really cool piece of ear candy that I feel like makes the song complete.
I used to hate the fame, but it's great without you. With somebody knows better than you ever will. I know.
If we don't do that, if we just have this like this, it doesn't really have the same impact.
With somebody knows better than you ever.
So for that, all we did was just automated the volume of the synths and the drums and the bass down. And then I've just got a couple risers that go into this blank little measure right here. And then I took this like a laser hit and reversed it with some glitches. Little things like that happen throughout this entire song. I can't go over every single one, but that was one that really, really stuck out to me as something that took the song to the next level. So doing things like that in your production, again, that's kind of a more pop or even electronic-based technique, but doing that in something that feels like a ballad just adds a little bit of hype for a moment that, you know, the song could get really kind of one note and generic and stale. Other than that, in the second verse, we have something kind of similar where we go into the turnaround. I talked a little bit earlier about how we filtered out those drums in the first half of that second verse, and then they come in fully. So to bridge that together, what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of do another swell up with another kind of moment of silence, and I added some glitches, and I chopped up one of his vocals. And that, to me, when I sent that to him, that was like one of his favorite things that we did in the entire production. And it took 5 minutes and just added so much to the track. Before that was there, it was literally just one vocal like that. Let me take these out. Let me drag this back out and show you what it sounded like. It sounded a little bit something like this.
All this fame has got me sentimental. You've been colors, say fly me up.
And it wasn't even that much because I still have these automated down. So let me take some of this out so you can really hear.
All this fame has got me sentimental. You been tripping colors, say fly me out.
And you can hear that by doing those little things like a pull out here and there and like adding some of those extra little glitches and some of those extra little hits and some of that extra vocal production. That can be a really, really, really huge way to add special moments. And we've talked about special moments a ton on this channel. I just wanted to show you a couple that I felt took the song from being kind of a really nice demo into something that felt like a full production. But that's pretty much it. Other than that, we find elements to kind of pull and bring in, but I showed you every single thing that went into this entire song. Other than that, it was just some volume automation, creating those little moments and pockets with moments of silence, and then all of the risers and hits and things like that that we use on this channel all the time. Other than that, let me show you the mastering chain real quick. People have really been wanting to see these lately, so let me show you what this sounds like. Here is what it sounds like with no mastering.
See me in this Moncler. You could have had it all, but the band got you. Now
First thing I'm doing is some bus compression with the VBC, what is this, the red. On their glue setting, I just tweak some of the attacks and drive.
see me in this Moncler. You could have had it all, but the band got you.
Then I'm just adding a little bit of saturation to the low end and the top end with Saturn 2 using the Magic preset that I've talked about on this channel quite a few times. Here are all of the settings if you want to copy it. It's just the Magic setting that they have in color, and I've made my own tweaks and kind of resaved that as my initial preset. Here's what it sounds like with and without. Here's with.
See me in this Moncler. You could have had it all, but the band
Here's without.
got you. Now I do this, oh yeah. I used to hate the fame, but it's great without you.
Kind of just pushes it into that modern pop lane of really top end, you know, nice bright silky highs, nice big beefy low end, and it kind of takes care of those mids from getting too boxy. Then we have the Goldfoss Master doing 17.5% on Recover and Tame. Let's take a look at what that looks like.
See me in this Moncler. You could have had it all, but the band got you. Now I do this, oh yeah. I used to hate the fame, but it's great.
Again, doing a nice job adding some of that top end from like 5K up. That's a really big area that you have to make sure you're using the right tool. Otherwise, things are going to get really bright and abrasive and aggressive. And I find Goldfoss does that really well because it's dynamic and it's algorithmic rather than just adding a big top end boost with something even like a mag EQ or a massive passive or something like that. Goldfoss, I think, is a really good way to just add those final little EQ curves so they can move throughout the song. Other than that, I'm adding Lin MB on the electro mastering preset. Been using it for years. We'll keep using it for years. Don't change anything about it. Just select that preset and let it go.
See me in this Moncler. You could have had it all, but the band got you. Now I do this, oh yeah.
So even without level matching or sending that to the final limiter, let me show you the difference, what it sounds like. So here's with none of the like master bus sauce.
See me in this Moncler. You could have had it all, but the band got you. Now I do this, oh yeah. I used
You can feel that the mids feel a bit more tight and a little bit more cohesive. Those vocals poke out a little bit. That kick is just sitting right where it needs to kind of still add a little bit of transient and punch and bounce, but not feel way too aggressive. And the top end just feels really nice and bright and silky. Other than that, I'm doing a little bit of, actually quite a bit of limiting using Pro L2. And here are the settings that I use for this. Let me go ahead and turn this on loudness so we can see what's going on here. And yeah, let's take a look. I'm just setting this out at -0.1 and adding quite a bit of gain.
see me in this Moncler. You could have had it all, but the band got you. Now I do this, oh yeah. I used to hate the fame, but it's great without you. With somebody new who's better than you.
Sitting right around -6, -6.5 on the chorus. That feels really good to me. And that is pretty much the entire production. Other than that, we have intros and outros. I just use those same elements that we've talked about before. And this is track 2 on his album. Track 1 is actually an intro that we made specifically to go into this. So if you'd like to see a video where we take an intro and kind of morph that into song 2, and I kind of show you how you can make songs that run into each other on an album that plays through, let me know because we can definitely do that. We did that with Moncler and with the intro of this album. So that is pretty much it for this song. As you can see, we took all of those different elements from sad ballads, pop, hip hop, trap, and we merged them together. So we have the bounce and the aggressiveness of hip hop in the drums. We have that kind of space and movement of the synths with like the pads and has that really nice mellow ballad feel. And then we're adding a little bit of that pop brightness and sheen with things like vocal production, ear candy, some of those more kind of top end bell synths that we're adding. And it gives us something that feels really nice. It's not super generic in one spot or the other. And yeah, I feel like this song came together really, really nicely, and I'm glad I finally got to go over it. If you enjoyed this video, please let us know. Let us know what you want to see in the comments down below. Other than that, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, head over to makepopmusic.com, where you can check out all of our sample packs, preset packs, courses, podcasts, all of that good stuff. And go listen to Riley's new album, City of Angels. But that's going to do it for this video. Let us know what you want to see next time in the comments below. But until then, much love. Peace.